only thing we have to fear is
in war,
fear itself.
There is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to WallBuilders Live. This is the intersection of faith and politics. Learn more about us at wallbuilders.com and wallbuilderslive.com. I'm Rick Green here with David Barton. We're looking at things from both an historical and a biblical perspective. And David, today's kind of crosses both of those. We've got a special guest that has served us both in the military and also pastor of a church here in Texas.
You know, and that's a pretty common occurrence back in early America, to be a pastor of a church and to serve in the military. So many folks we can look to like that. And this particular one, Pastor Lee Boss in Austin, Texas, I've spoken at his church across the years periodically. And when I was recently with him, I was sitting in his office and we were talking and just catching up a little bit before the service. And I noticed on his lapel of his coat a military, really a military symbol. It's, you know, the guys are allowed to wear little dots almost, little buttons on their lapel if they got the Bronze Star or Purple Heart, whatever. And so I saw it and recognized it, and I said, "You're in the military?" You know, all the times I've been with him all the years, I didn't know he's in the military. Yeah, well, what'd you do? And I started asking, and it was kind of like pulling tusks out of an elephant. You know, it was hard to get him to tell the story, but once he started telling the story and he opened up, it was quite a remarkable story. And so I remember after I left church that day, I sent you an email and said, we gotta talk to Pastor Boss. I mean, he has some really good stories. And I just kept asking questions and sitting there and just kind of listening and imagining what it would have been like to be in Vietnam doing what he did and the situations he found himself in. And I mean, he's just quite a hero. And there's a real reason he had that little award. It's, again, military guys are not ostentatious, and they just, some of them that have earned a special award will wear it on the lapel of a jacket. And if you don't really know what it is, you don't pay much attention to it, and that's the way they intend it. But guys that are in the military will recognize it and recognize what that guy's done. And so, you know, with two kids in the military, I've learned to start recognizing things like that, and it was quite a story that Pastor Boss had to tell.
Now you mentioned that the founders, you know, in the founding era, this was not uncommon, and that pastors often have served both in the church and in the military. Why do you think that is? Is that a sense of duty that to God and country both that just seems to come out when someone's that dedicated?
Well, when you have a sense of duty, you understand from God's perspective you're to serve others. And when you serve others, you do that in lots of ways. Benjamin Rush pointed out that patriotism was actually a spiritual responsibility, because if you're patriotic, you're wanting what's best for your country. You're seeking the best for your country. You're seeking the best for all of your fellow citizens, and that's why you're patriotic. It's not because, I'm proud of, you know, the red, white, and blue. Yeah, you are. You're proud of the red, white, and blue because of what it has done for others, not because it just happens to be a color combination you like. So the real sense of patriotism was willing to do things to help others. And from a Christian perspective, that's what we're supposed to do. We're told in Romans 14:7, no man lives to himself, nobody dies to himself. This is not about you, Bubba. It's about everybody else. God put you here not for your own purpose, but for His purpose. So that's why it's often easy to be a pastor of a church. You're serving people spiritually and meeting spiritual needs, but it is often easy to be part of the military because you're serving their temporal, their physical needs. You're trying to provide the best country you possibly can for them so they can enjoy the most freedoms, they can have the most opportunities of prosperity, they can have all these blessings. And so I think pastors who understand their relationship with God and the duties that the Bible requires of them, they understand they're not there for themselves, they're willing to serve in any arena they need to, and that often includes both the spiritual and the temporal arena.
Well, we're going to get a great example of it today. Pastor Lee Boss is our special guest when we return on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Since the Ten Commandments have formed the basis of civil law in the Western world for over 2,000 years, an individual is more likely to find a copy of them in a government building rather than a religious one. Yet amazingly, numerous rulings over recent years now make it unconstitutional to display the commandments in many public arenas. Consider what founding father John Adams said about this. He declared, "The moment the idea is admitted into society that property is not as sacred as the laws of God, anarchy and tyranny commence. If 'thou shalt not covet' and 'thou shalt not steal' were not commandments of heaven, they must be made inviolable precepts in every society before it can be civilized or made free." John Adams believed that no society could remain civilized if separated from the Ten Commandments.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back to the intersection of faith and politics. This is WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us. Our guest today is Pastor Lee Boss. Pastor, thanks for coming on, sir.
Well, you're welcome, Rick. Good to be here.
Hey, man, so many things we could talk about. I know you love talking about the Lord and what God's doing there at Victory Church and what you guys just the impact you're having on the community in Austin. Victory Christian Center's had a big impact on Austin, and I live way south of there in Dripping Springs, but we're just proud of what you guys do. But we also want to talk to you about your experience as a veteran. We love getting the stories of guys like you that served and sacrificed and made our freedom possible, and we appreciate you being willing to talk about that today, and we want to share that with our listeners.
Okay, Rick. Glad to.
So you now for you, when you went in, you had already gone to college, played basketball there at the University of Arkansas for the Razorbacks, championship team there. So how did you end up in the military?
I got my commission in the United States Army through ROTC department there at the University of Arkansas.
All right. So you went in what year then?
In 1962.
1962. Okay. So now a lot of folks just kind of putting things in context here. What was when did the Vietnam War break out, and when did you actually go over?
Well, the first conventional troops were sent over there in July of 1965. I was stationed with the 25th Infantry Division in Hawaii at the time, and we went over in January of 1966. So we were there an entire year from January through December of 1966.
So this was really early.
Yes, it was, yes.
So now when David was over with you a week or two ago, you were sharing with him a particular battle that you guys ended up in that, man, it was almost like sounded very similar to the movie We Were Soldiers. You guys ended up essentially trapped.
Yes, we were in a very similar situation, not quite as many of the North Vietnamese that we were surrounded with, but as the movie that you're referring to. But in November 1966, we were close to the Cambodian border. Matter of fact, we were stationed in the Central Highlands up around Pleiku in that area, not too far south of the DMZ. We were stationed there where the Laotian and the Cambodian border come into South Vietnam. Anyway, we were stationed there. I was with the 3rd Brigade of the 25th Infantry Division, 1st Battalion, 14th Infantry.
And you were company commander?
I commanded Alpha Company of 1st 14th Infantry.
And so about how many guys are in your company there?
Well, back then our maximum strength had been about 175. I think that day I had about 150 in my unit out in the field that day, and we were close to the Cambodian border, and we got into a little firefight, and that's, of course, everything had to be reported up line, and so whenever the high brass found out that we were close right on the Cambodian border, they ordered us back. So we had to disengage from the enemy and pull back to an LZ so we could extract our wounded. We had about 8 people wounded in the first little initial firefight. And during this time, it was a small LZ and only one little helicopter could get in at a time, and it took quite a while, about a couple hours, to evacuate all 8 of the wounded, and which gave the North Vietnamese an opportunity to completely surround our position without us even really knowing about it. And then after we got the last wounded out, we were ordered to move due east away from the Cambodian border. And in doing so, we run right smack into the about a company of North Vietnamese. So we tried to withdraw to our LZ, and by that time it was being overrun with another company. I think, in result of it, I think my company was in combat with about a battalion-sized North Vietnamese regiment, about 600 to 700 North Vietnamese.
So you're probably outnumbered, 7 to 1 there?
Oh, pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close. And that particular day, the battle lasted several hours, and most of the battles we had only lasted a few moments, because they usually would hit and run, and not fight too long. But this time they had us surrounded, and they were really trying for an American kill. And so they kept assaulting us. They were throwing mortars on top of us as well as on top of their own men. And they were human waving, assaulting our little perimeter that we'd set up inside the LZ. And so the battle lasted about 3 or 4 hours, and through helicopter gunships, our artillery that was supporting us, as well as our own 4-deuce mortars and our own and the Navy and Air Force gunships and Air Force. They completely surrounded us with their air power and mortars, and the only thing that saved us that day, really.
Did you lose many guys that day?
That day we had 17 killed and 35 wounded.
I understand one of those gentlemen was awarded the Medal of Honor.
Yes, Captain Joseph Grant. He was a lieutenant, first lieutenant then, but they promoted him to captain, and he was awarded the Medal of Honor. And today they still have in the A Company of the 1st 14th Infantry in the 25th Division, they have the Joseph Grant Day, since he was awarded the Medal of Honor from that company.
Our guest today is Pastor Lee Boss. Back in a moment here on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. What is the purpose of government? Founding Father Oliver Ellsworth believed he knew. Oliver Ellsworth was a delegate at the convention which formed the Constitution, and later he became the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. Concerning the purpose of government, Oliver Ellsworth declared, "The primary objects of government are the peace, order, and prosperity of society." Yet how were these goals to be achieved? Ellsworth explained, "To the promotion of these objects, good morals are essential. Institutions for the promotion of good morals are therefore objects of legislative provision and support, and among these, religious institutions are eminently useful and important." Founding Father Oliver Ellsworth believed government could never reach its goals apart from the help of religious institutions.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
We're back here on WallBuilders Live. Our guest today is Pastor Lee Boss. The church's Victory Christian Center in Austin, Texas, has a huge impact on the community here in Austin. And but we, today have been talking about, Pastor Lee, your service in the military and in Vietnam, and some of the amazing stories that came from there, and appreciate that so much. And very curious, even to learn a little bit more about how you came to know the Lord, and how your faith impacted you even when you were serving in the military.
Well, I was saved at a very young age, around 11 or 13, something like that. And I grew up in church, but I really didn't really know the Lord. I think about the only scripture I knew was John 3:16, and my mother, though, was praying for me all the time. And I knew my mother was praying for me the entire time I was over in Vietnam. And even though I had a connection with the Lord, I wasn't really serving Him in the military or before I went in. And but many times in Vietnam and during the various firefights and engagement we get involved in, I knew the Lord's hand was upon me, and He was protecting me, and He had a plan for my life. I just at that time didn't know what it was, and.
In fact, one of those times you actually took some friendly fire. David was telling me about a story you shared with him where you had some helicopters, American helicopters, that thought you guys were the enemy.
Yeah, we operated what was called search and destroy operations, and each battalion would give it like about a 10-mile radius, and and then the battalion commander, he would divide that 10-mile radius or 10-mile square up into smaller portions for each company, and we would just maneuver in and out of that zone, searching and destroying any of the enemy's caches or ammunition or rice that we could find. And so during one of these times that some of the scout helicopters evidently didn't know what was our area of operation, and they saw some of our people moving in the brush line, and they actually thought they were North Vietnamese, and so they started firing on them, and so we started popping smoke and lavender and red and yellow smoke just to let them know that we were friendlies, and it was a really hairy experience there for a minute. We thought for a moment that that they were going to start shooting on us, and of course we couldn't let that happen. We were I don't know what would happen if they had a shot on us, and we were prepared to shoot back if we had to, just to protect our own men.
Sure, yeah, but with friends like that, who needs enemies? Man, that's it's amazing though that with the amount of firepower and how large the operations are, it's amazing it doesn't happen more often. I mean, it really is. It's incredible how efficient the American military is, and I don't know how they keep that from happening more often. But so take me to coming home and going into the ministry, and a little bit of how God moved you from that military arena into the ministry.
Well, I was in the military for approximately 6 years, and fortunately obtained the rank of captain. And I decided though that the military career wasn't really for me, so I got out and I went into the real estate business for a while. And as while I was in the real estate business, on Easter Sunday, 1975, that I had a real encounter with the Lord, and it was that day I like to say that I got a full comprehensive policy, not just a fire insurance policy.
I like that.
That's the day the Lord, as the day Jesus became my Lord, not just my Savior. And Easter Sunday, 1975, and I haven't been a day since then without the Bible in my hand or the Word of God in my mouth. And so one thing led to another, and I finally went off to Bible school in the early 80s, and the Victory Christian Center in Tulsa. And it was there that I really realized I was being called into the ministry while I was there in Tulsa. At VCBI, Victory Christian Bible Institute, there in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
And did you serve up there some before you started the church here in Austin?
Yes, my wife and I, we were on Pastor Billy Joe Daughtery's Victory Christian Center staff for 2 years. We were in the church for 7 years. I mean, on staff for 2 years, and during that time we were on staff that we really learned how to be a pastor, and that the Lord called us down here to Austin, Texas, to pioneer and pastor a brand new church.
Well, you've served us in terms of literally on the front lines in battle to protect our freedom, and now for years served our community and frankly our nation in ministry like this. How do you communicate to people how blessed we are to have the freedom we have because guys like you did serve in the military the way you did, and our freedom of religion and freedom of conscience here? How do you try to get across to especially the younger generation how unique this is, how precious it is, how valuable it is, and why they should appreciate it?
That's a good question, Rick, because we've always done that. Well, what we try to do is every holiday, every patriotic day, every day, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Remembrance, 9/11 Day, every opportunity we get, we hang our flags out. We talk about patriotism. We talk about the freedoms of our nation. We talk about the parallel between Christ's freedom from sin and the blood that men gave to win our freedom here in America. And we talk about the Constitution. And so we start this at a young age. We started right there in Super Kids, grade 1 through 5, and start teaching them in our Sunday school classes about America and about the parallel between the blood of Christ and the blood of Americans that have given their lives, for the freedom of our nation.
Yeah, man, we are. We're so blessed, and I guess we just, I worry whether or not this each generation is being taught enough of that. I wish everybody did what you do at your church is such a great example of, because they need to see it, like you said, from a young age and begin to realize just how unique and how special it is. And when they do, then they're more willing to do their part in defending and preserving it. And also just want to thank you for being a church and a pastor that applies the Scripture to daily life and challenges your church to go out and be influential in the culture. We need more of that as well. But, man, I just, David and I both appreciate you, and we wanted to honor you and get your story because, not just to tell your story, but hopefully to get people to realize just how blessed we are to have folks that are willing to serve and to sacrifice. So thanks for being one of those guys.
Well, you're certainly welcome, Rick, and next time you're in Austin, I stop by and see us.
All right, brother. God bless you. Thanks for coming on today.
You're welcome.
Back in a moment with David Barton. Have you ever wanted to learn more about the United States Constitution but just felt like, man, the classes are boring, or it's just that old language from 200 years ago, or I don't know where to start? People want to know, but it gets frustrating because you don't know where to look for truth about the Constitution either. Well, we've got a special program for you available now called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green, and it's actually a teaching done on the Constitution at Independence Hall in the very room where the Constitution was framed. We take you both to Philadelphia, the cradle of liberty and Independence Hall, and to the WallBuilders Library, where David Barton brings the history to life to teach the original intent of our founding fathers. We call it the Quick Start Guide to the Constitution because in just a few hours through these videos, you will learn the Citizen's Guide to America's Constitution. You'll learn what you need to do to help save our constitutional republic. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's going to inspire you to do your part to preserve freedom for future generations. It's called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green. You can find out more information on our website now at wallbuilders.com.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Back now with David Barton. And David, great. Man, what a servant's attitude. You can hear humility as he even describes the things that he did, but kind of that tender warrior guy. That's what I kept thinking as I'm talking to him. I'm picturing this guy that can be humble and sweet, but, man, a commander of 175 guys. He could step up when he needed to.
Well, you did hear him talk about all the medals he won, didn't you?
Not one.
Well, you didn't hear him mention that he has the third highest military award in United States military? You didn't hear that? He didn't hear him say that?
Not a bit.
Yeah, see, that's the way he is. I mean, he is quite a soldier, again, and that's that little pin I saw on his lapel, which is the nation's third highest military award for valor. I mean, this is given for gallantry in action. And you didn't hear him talk about anything he did. It's what his guys did. It's the guys that got killed, the one who won the Medal of Honor, etc. And you didn't hear anything about him, and that's the way he is. Now, I've got to tell you, just listen to his stories when I was in office are quite remarkable. And, you got the sense that he was outnumbered 6-1, in that battle they had, and it went on for several hours. And then as you were asking about the friendly fire incident, what he didn't tell you was, as they kept zeroing in on him and hovering over looking for his guy, and they're there because they're supposed to search that 10-mile square area. And by the way, he said that one of the really interesting things, what they had to do in searching through the jungles, was they found complete cities that were underground, tunnel cities. I mean, they had hospitals underground, had everything, and that's where the Vietnamese would stay, is underground. Now, he said, I said, well, they get underground, can you get them with bombs from above? He said, oh, yeah. He said, one night we were like 20 miles away, and one of the bombs hit, and he said, when we got there the next day and saw where the bomb hit, the bomb had blown a crater nearly 60 feet deep. So he said these bombs blow craters 6 to 7 stories deep in the ground. And so, but they would have to go down to these tunnels and look for the guys. And, it's hard to clear a tunnel when there's booby traps and everything else waiting for you. So in that friendly fire incident, when they were looking for these tunnels and these cities and whatnot, he was getting his guys lined up to have to shoot down our helicopters if they kept firing at us, because he's going to save his troops' life, do anything he can. And they called in the base, and the general actually got in a copter and zoomed his copter over there and put the general's copter right between Lee's soldiers and the helicopters that were starting to fire on them. So that's a lot of courage on the part of a general. He's put his own chopper right between the Americans firing at the Americans on friendly fire. So just a lot of cool stories. But I loved what Lee said at the end. I mean, how many churches do you know where that in Sunday school classes they teach the kids American history and the Constitution? I mean, that's good, and it needs to, because if you teach it right, God's in the middle of all that stuff. It's not like you're teaching a secular course in Sunday school. If you teach it the way it used to be taught and the way it happened, you'll have God right in the middle of it, which is a great thing for the kids to see.
Yeah, that is rare, but man, we need more of it. And in fact, David, one of the things that we're blessed with at WallBuilders is a lot of Sunday schools that are willing to do that use WallBuilders materials to teach those principles, because it has both that biblical, the Bible and history coming together. Man, it was great to hear him lay it out, how they look for opportunities
to
bring that stuff to life.
Yeah, the blood of Christ and the blood that soldiers are willing to shed to save the country. I mean, those parallelisms, that's really good stuff, and that makes it applicable. And people remember that because it makes your faith very practical, and that's what faith should be. It always has been practical. We're living in a time in America today where we're starting to make our faith irrelevant because it is not practical to what goes on, but Lee does a good job of making it practical.
It was a great story, man. I'm so glad after you talked to him, you said, "Man, let's get him on." He's one of these veterans that has a great story to tell and a great example of leadership. I mean, that's what we're really trying to teach this next generation, is what are those high quality leadership skills that we need for our nation. And man, his integrity and his sense of duty was on display for us today. So what a blessing to have him with us. Thanks for listening today. Hope you've enjoyed our program. You've been listening to WallBuilders Live.
We stand under